All right. Y'all come close. Come. Yeah. Make sure that we. All right. Good morning. Y'all, is the press all ready? I want to thank especially those that are following us on Facebook and X, and the folks who are here as well, Lieutenant Governor, Secretary Richard Nelson, Justice McCallum, PSC Member Eric Scametta, Chairman Bo Boye. Look, I want to start off in Daniel and Chuck and Lulan and oh, there you go. Come on in. Hey, Tony, thank you. Mike Johnson, Judge Hamilton. Y'all come on a little closer so they can see y'all because this is important. I want to tell you, first of all, I want to start off by repeating something I've consistently said, and I said from the day that they swore me in, is that I love this state, and I love the people of this state. And the team that stands behind me and others who could not join us today have been working tirelessly because they love the state too, and they love the people of this state. You know, we would not be here today if we did not have a commitment from the leadership of both chambers before we started this session on trying to reorganize the Constitution. Okay? This is about giving the legislature the tools to address the problems that we know are coming and the opportunity to make the changes that the people of this state are not only demanding, but they're anxiously waiting for. And the tools that we're trying to give the legislature are those that they have never had to address problems that come up during times of a fiscal shortfall. This is not, and I repeat it, this is not a rewrite of the Constitution. This is a reorganization of the Constitution. It's kind of like maybe cleaning up your yard in springtime, right? Raking the leaves, taking some of the weeds out of the landscape, making the place beautiful and more attractive. And who do we want to attract? The people who are moving out of states where they tax too much, where there's no liberty, where they're looking for a safer place and a better opportunity for their families. We know this. We have seen this. Over the last almost 10 years now, there has been a mass exodus of people moving from different areas of the country into the South. And what that has done is created what I call a new industrial South. And we see it in the statistics, whether it's Florida, Texas, which are two pretty big states, or Alabama, or South Carolina, or Mississippi, or Arkansas, or Tennessee. Our people, when you leave this state and you travel to those states, you see the benefit that is happening in those states by people that are coming in. This is about also changing the way that Louisiana governs itself. And so what we're doing today is I want to thank Chairman Boye because he has been able to move this bill out of his committee and onto the floor. But I want to address a few things that seem to not be able to make it either in the press or in the news stories. The enabling legislation that Representative Boye has, it becomes a framework and a guide to guide the convention as they try to clean up the Constitution in a way that, again, gives the legislatures the tools they need to make Louisiana competitive. What's important is the timing, because people are saying we're moving too fast. People are saying, why can't we wait? This is extremely important for them to understand. I believe that if we are going to reorganize, if we're going to clean up the Constitution, ultimately the people of this state are going to have the last say, because the work of the convention ultimately will land on a ballot. That ballot will be in November. In November, the most amount of people in this state will go vote. Now, we all like to think that during our statewide elections, that we're really that popular with the voters. But quite frankly, they seem to love to vote for president more than they love to vote for the legislature and governor and sheriffs and the whatnot. And so to me, if we are going to make that type of change for the people, don't you believe it should be placed at a time when the most amount of people of this state can have a say? Some say, well, maybe we could do it next year. Well, next year we don't have a statewide election, which means that we'd have to dip into the coffers and then hold a special statewide election. How many people you think would go vote at that time? And then let's say we pass it. My friends in the media would say, well, this is not right. Only 20% of Louisianians would have made a decision for everyone. So you see, we really don't have the time to wait. We also go into a fiscal session next year. Many of us, including myself, campaigned on wanting to do wholesale tax reform. I was joined in that campaign by my good friend, who is probably one of the smartest fellas I know on tax reform, who has been in this legislature moaning and complaining about our tax code and recognizing the obstacles that the Constitution creates in order for us to do so. What has evaded us is the special interest that has been cluttered into the Constitution since 72. The work of the 72 convention was great. It was a wonderful job that they did. In fact, one of our delegates, I'm hoping, is Mr. Boise Bollinger, who served on that convention. They did a great job. The problem is that when they left and they gave us the Constitution, since that time, we've allowed special interests to riddle the Constitution up. We know, y'all have heard me say, over 216 amendments. And when I talk to voters out there, even today, they say, could you please not send us any more amendments to the Constitution? We'd like that to stop. This is what we're trying to do. So then there's a process. So that's the timing. Because again, we got a fiscal session. If we're going to address taxes, we have to address it next year. Or we have to call the legislature into a special session to do so. I would much rather do it during a fiscal session. So then we talk about the process. We get to the enabling legislation. That enabling legislation, as I said earlier, creates a guide, a framework under which the convention must adhere to. Last week, and then again on yesterday, which is why we're here today, the House committee, when they took up the enabling legislation last week, one of the first amendments they put on it was to ensure that Article 1 of our Constitution was not to be dealt with by the convention. Now, many of you may say, well, what's Article 1, Governor? Well, Article 1 of the Louisiana Constitution is the section that's called fundamental rights. It has a lot of what you would see in the U.S. Constitution's Bill of Rights. It holds our version of the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, and many other rights that we hold sacrosanct here in this state. That's the part I was very disappointed was not out there in a lot of the media coverage, because that would put a lot of people at ease. We're not going after your guns or your pro-life stances or your right to vote or any of those things. That's already been guarded off. It's been walled off. You see, the enabling legislation, as it moves through the process, the legislature has an opportunity to place those guardrails in the legislation. They did it again. Where's Bo? Oh, you can come closer. It's your legislation. They did it again yesterday, where they went through Articles 2, 3, and 4. And so within that process, what we have done, and many of those folks that are standing here, worked during the transition on trying to clean up the Constitution. They did it, and then they produced a report. So anyone who says, well, Governor, you didn't tell me that we were going to take this up, I would point to them to our website. And the fact that they put that report, and it still is today on that website, completely transparent of the things that they believe needed to be cleaned up in the Constitution. And by the way, you should take a look at who sat on that transition committee. It was not all Republicans. It was not all conservatives. It was a very broad range of people from different walks of life, different ideologies, but all cared about this state. And they produced a document. That document is not chiseled in stone. It's a suggestion. And what they suggested was that the process we used is a convention that is restricted, that does one of three things, three choices we have. One, we can take things that we want to remain in the Constitution and not touch, and we can protect them. That's what they did yesterday and the week before. They can say, we want these things to remain in the Constitution. However, we may want to modify some things, or we may need to clean them up. There's a bunch of styling that needs to be cleaned up in that Constitution. You can do it there. They did that as well, I think, right, Bo? All right. Or they can do the third thing. Some of those provisions can then be moved to a set of statutes. Those set of statutes can have a 2/3 threshold to amend or to change. And if you actually look inside the Constitution, you see that some of the protected things in there actually allow the legislature at a 2/3. Why would we need it then? Let's move it into the statute so we can put it all on the table and decide what are those things we need to reform in order to move the state forward. Now, the naysayers out there will say, well, you know, when you put it in the statute, the legislature made and changed that statute by a majority. Again, you can put language in the Constitution that says that those statutes cannot be amended by a simple majority. Anyone who tries to criticize this process, I ask them to come and talk to these folks. These folks are not in the business of failure. They're not in the business of no. They're not in the business of can't. Their glasses are half full. They're half full for the people of this state who we know want to see change, want to see an opportunity to bring people back home, want to see an opportunity to bring industry into this state. Because we deserve that. We're so great people. And I've seen it. I've had companies come to me in a short time I've been able to serve as governor and talk about coming to Louisiana, where maybe they were looking at going to Mississippi, Alabama, and they talk to me about those structural things. Can y'all do this? Are y'all going to do that? Why is the tax code so complicated? Then they end up going to Alabama, and we missed that opportunity. This opportunity in the South is not going to be here forever. This window will open, well, it's open right now, and then it will close. We could end up, which is what they tell us, with a budget shortfall next year to the tune of $500 million. We have seen the fights that occur in this building when we have to do that. Because there's only two places that the members of the legislature can really cut from. Two places: education and healthcare. It's those two items have been beat into the citizens of this state because they've watched the fight. They've watched it like a food fight in a cafeteria. And think about that. Think about those two issues, healthcare and education, two places under which this state is dead last in. Now, you think we can fix education and get better outcomes for students while we cut TOPS or cut vocational schools or cut community colleges or cut universities or reduce those things, reduce the funding to our elementary and K through 12 schools? They don't want to do that. None of these legislators want to do that. And then you go to healthcare. We are one of the poorest parishes. We're one of the worst health outcomes. We've got some great people. Dr. Abraham and his team have been working tirelessly. I know him and I chat at 5:30 in the morning, sometimes 4:30, so I don't have to call Mike that early. Okay? But you then, if you start having to cut to the tune of, say, 17 to 18%, you then start tying Dr. Abraham and his team's ability to reform our healthcare in this state in a way that is better for the patient and the outcome. And that's the decision we're going to have to make next year. This is about giving the legislature more tools. Anybody that says that, Governor, you're just trying to consume more power, I am here to tell you all in front of the media that is completely nonsense. In fact, some will argue you got plenty of power in and of itself if you leave the Constitution just like it is. I'm here wanting to help these folks who the people of this great state have sent during this term to be able to change the overall economic environment of this state. And so again, the timing, unfortunately, is rushed because we want the most amount of people in this state to have a say in the work that they do. The process allows us to ensure that some of the sacrosanct things that the people of this state want and demand in their Constitution remain in their Constitution inside the enabling legislation as it works through. And then finally, we are all doing this because we care about the people of this state. And we've all made a commitment to try to better their lives and to try to leave our jobs where the state is in a better place than we found it. I want to thank the people of the state again for giving me an opportunity to be their governor. I want to thank the legislature. I want to thank the Speaker of the House and all of the representatives in the House for being able to have the patience with us as we work through this process. The Chairman Boyer as well has done an unbelievable job of walking through in a very transparent manner how we're moving this legislation. And hopefully we get it onto the floor and then we get it over to the Senate where they get an opportunity to work through what they believe are the guardrails or the things that they think they either want to put above or we call it below the line or what they want to leave in. They can put those amendments just like that as we work through the articles. So again, thank you. And I will open it up for any questions that y'all may have. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Governor. You talked about removing some things from the Constitution. Do you support removing the homestead exemption? And what about MFP, the formula for that?
Look, here's what I tell you. I do not, homestead exemption can stay in the Constitution. I met with the sheriffs that day. Supplemental pay can stay in the Constitution. But all of the things that are underneath those that don't allow the legislature to look at them should be moved into a particular statute. But more importantly, it's not really what I support. It's what the legislature deems should remain in it. This is not a me process. This is a we process. And so again, we give them an outline. Say, look, based upon the work of the committee, who again, by the way, take a look at the makeup of the committee, the suggestions that they made. And then they can debate it and they can determine whether it stays in or stays out. So So really, it's not really so much what I want, it's what they believe they need to help address some of the budget shortfalls and to do the tax reforms and to clean things up for the state. It- it- What is my preference? My preference is the will of the legislature. Okay, my preference is what they believe, what the people believe they want to stay or not stay. I mean, again, I have no problem if they come to me and say, look, these items we believe need to stay. Okay, no problem. These items we believe need to be moved up. What's wrong with that? That's what the people elected them to make that decision. Yes, sir.
Governor, if everything goes according to y'all's plan and it makes it on the ballot in November with the votes rejected, then what? It goes back to the drawing board?
Well, we go to start working and figuring out how we can minimize the cuts to education and to healthcare and to try to minimize the bloodbath in this building that goes on every time that happens. I mean, look, we could all forget about this process and forget about an opportunity to make it better and to not worry about it and then just go through the particular food fight, which I can promise y'all, we'll have plenty of criticism. But we deserve to at least give the people of the state an opportunity to say, hey, we're going to have this fight or we don't have to have it. And at the same time, we can make the state better. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, you talked about the pots of money that can currently be cut from to fill any sort of fiscal cliff, which is higher ed and healthcare. What other currently protected pots of money would you like to see opened up to be able to address those issues?
Again, that's a great question for the legislature. Believe you me, both the Speaker and the Senate President know those pots and know those levers better than anyone else because they were here when there was a budget shortfall. They were. So they know it. It's a great question to ask them. But again, if they come to me just as the question she asked and say, look, these are the pots. These are the areas. But here's what I tell you. It's almost like you're on a farm in the old days where you had to have mules to pull the plow. And you got 12 mules in your stable. You got a new field, you got to plow. Every time you got a new field, it's a lot harder to plow than a field that you plowed before. But every time you got to plow a new field, you pull out the same 2 mules while you leave the other 10 in there grazing and getting fat. Why not hook up all 12 of them and plow the field in a nice, easier way where everybody pulls the plow rather than the poor 2 mules in there that we continue to pull out the barn and abuse?
Would you say that you're open to opening all pots of money to address this?
Look, I think it's also important that all of the great people watching this or who are going to read on this, they're going to get the final say. It was a great question he asked. Look, the people get the opportunity to finally say, okay, we either want to keep all the special interests in the Constitution and keep the state where it is, or we want to give the legislature an opportunity and fill their toolbox with more tools. I can tell you, again, that's why Richard's standing right here. He knows it as well. He's seen it. It's why him and I were on the ballot at the same time at one time. You know what I mean? Because he was frustrated as well with this process. We've got some great, smart people in this state. We can figure it out if we get to work and we have the flexibility to do that. I don't know. Let me tell you something. You know what fear is? Fear is a liar. Fear is what paralyzes people in a community, in a state. There is no state, no community, no organization, no team who can be successful if they allow fear to grip them. That's what has happened in this state. We continue to pull out some boogeyman who we never can see, or some straw man who we want to go beat up in order to keep this state dead last. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Governor, you referenced the Transition Committee on Constitutional Reform. That committee released just 2 paragraphs on what it recommended, and the membership was not public as you suggested. Will you release the full report and the membership of that committee?
I thought we released the full report. I can go back and check. We can take a look at it and see what it is.
Yeah,
And we
released it.
Okay.
I requested it.
All right. Okay, well, we'll go back and take a look at that. And look, I can tell you this. Most of the people, I released the delegates that I would choose if they give me 27.
The report's on the website, the list of people is not people.
Yeah, I can put that on there. Yeah, that's not a problem. No problem. We can put that on there. I have no problem. Yeah. Do you have a follow?
If you're gonna release the full report and the
Yeah.
membership of the committee, then good.
Okay.
The full report was released.
The full report is,
It was just 2 paragraphs that are on the press release on the website. Is that the full report?
It is, I guess.
if that's what's on the web. Yeah, I mean, we released all of the reports, all of the findings. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, you talked earlier about boogeymen, and you've repeatedly cited special interests putting things in the Constitution. Can you cite 3 things that special interests have put into the Constitution that you'd like to address?
Well, I mean, look, Tyler, you can see them inside. I had been carrying my Constitution around and I forgot it today. It's actually tabbed up, all right? Because I have it as I've been meeting with different groups. But like, why don't you go through it and see?
No, I'm just
And
asking if you can.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can see all of the protected funds. Who mentioned the funds? Okay. All of the different funds that we put different things in. And we said, listen, we just don't trust the legislature to do this at that particular time. Because here's what happens. We go through a boom. Nobody has a problem. We go through a bust. And then the legislature has to make tough choices. And then some group doesn't like the choices they make or whatever. And so they go to the Constitution or they go to the legislature, we put up a constitutional amendment, go over to the vote of the people. The people get to the booth. They look at this long ballot. I know because I've been witness to this. It happens to me every time there's an election with constitutional amendments. I get a litany of texts and calls and is this good? Is this bad? I don't understand it. Why are they doing this? Okay. I have not found one group of people that likes the continual abuse of the ballot of all the Constitution. Just today, I forgot what the number of constitutional amendments that have been filed by legislators. I know one of them filed 12, one legislator filed 12 pieces of constitutional amendments. Now think about it. We'll get you the number. Anybody? Somebody has the exact number of, we'll get that for you, Tyler. You should print that. How many have already been filed? Okay, because here's the thing. With all due respect, if all of those amendments have been filed, that means that those legislators are having problems inside the Constitution or something that they need to change because there may be an obstacle inside the Constitution that they feel they're trying to get to. That's all we're saying here. Any other questions?
Last question.
Yeah. Okay.
What
Yes,
about
ma'am.
Article 5?
What about Article 5?
What changes would you like to see?
Look, I think in Article 5, I think the only, this is me now, okay? Not the legislature. They may have a different take on it. The only thing that I would like to see is to allow this legislature to have the ability by 2/3 vote, I'm fine with that, to create specialty courts. You realize we had to go to the Constitution and to the people just to create the drug courts. We can't create mental health courts. We can't create veterans courts. We can't create some of the special courts that actually other states have utilized to improve their criminal justice system. We got to go to the Constitution every time we do that. So if you ask me, that's the one thing I'd like to see. That's just my personal.
What would you say to lawmakers who've been public, African-American lawmakers who are concerned about possible changes to Article 5 and what it could mean? Some have said, if you go too far, we're going to court
If we go too far, what?
on changes to Article 5.
Well, yeah, listen, I don't think anyone in that community should be worried. As soon as I leave here, I'm getting ready to go sign a bill that puts a second minority on the Supreme Court of this state. I mean, I don't know why anybody would have that concern. I'm going to do it, right? I'm pretty sure today. I'm pretty sure the bill, didn't y'all pass it yesterday, Mike? Yeah. So that's what I would say. Listen, how about they watch my actions rather than somebody else's words? That's what I would say. All right, look, again, I want to thank these folks. These people behind us have been working tirelessly, and many others who couldn't join us. And I will tell you that they represent a broad swath. In fact, look at the delegates that I have also to the Constitution. See that particular makeup. And again, I want to thank the people of this state. Look, we have an opportunity to do some unbelievable great things and bring some people back home, create some great industries here, and join the rest of our southern neighbors and having a great time. Thank you. God bless you.